things. And I think many of us who were raised in all kinds of households were sent these messages either directly or indirectly that we had to be a certain way in the world in order to be okay or enough for that matter.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because if we go back to look at sort of the way, the science of attachment and generational patterns of attachment in relationships between parents and children, our parents may have been raised a certain way to think, okay, I have to be a certain way in the world to survive, to be okay. And they just keep passing that down to us. And then we're little girls who grow up needing to be the good girl or do things right or have certain interests or feel certain ways or perform certain ways in order to get what we want. And then if we're not paying attention, we will bring that to our own children. So it's very human. I mean, I don't know that I've ever met anyone that doesn't get caught in this cycle. So the question isn't good, bad, right, wrong, that we're in it. It's what do we do with it, right? When we realize that we're sort of working and living and doing in a way that's leading to burnout and guilt and anxiety, what part am I playing in that? How are my
Mhm.
thoughts and my beliefs triggering that whole sense of feeling and being in motherhood?
Welcome, Kate Kripke. I am so honored to have you on. I can't wait to get into everything we're going to talk about. So thanks so much for being here.
I'm so excited for this conversation, Kelly. Thanks for having
Me,
me.
yeah, absolutely. Me too. And there's going to be so many things that come out. I mean, just as we're talking, there's going to be so many things that I know will resonate with people deeply. And one thing I just want to start with is something that I've experienced, and I think almost every single mom has probably experienced this, is that sense of mom guilt that you're trying to be a mom. You're trying, many moms are working moms now, and you're trying to be a wife, and you're holding down all these roles and yet feeling like no matter what you do, you're never able to be enough in all those roles. And so we carry so much guilt with that. Can you speak on that? Like, why are we experiencing so much guilt when we are exhausting ourselves, putting so much effort into everything?
It's such a good and profoundly important question. And I think I want to break the answer down into two pieces, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First, let's just define guilt for a moment, because guilt is, in its essence, the assumption that we've broken some kind of rule,
Mhm.
right? We've done something wrong. I feel very strongly. I think many of us weren't raised to trust this or to have the same belief system, but I feel really strongly that the feelings are never the problem. So feeling guilty is not a problem. We want to sort of get underneath it, to your point, and say, what am I feeling guilty for? Really, where we need to ask ourselves, what's the rule that I'm telling myself I've broken? So many of us come to motherhood with these old, hardwired, deeply buried beliefs about ourselves, like I'm not enough or I'm not okay unless dot, 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 right? I'm not enough unless, I'm not okay unless, I'm not worthy unless. And if we bring that mindset and that deep limiting belief that's so buried in fear to mothering, we're going to see everything around us is not enough and not okay and not worthy, right? We take those beliefs and we project them onto motherhood. So that when we ask that question, what's the rule I'm telling myself I've broken? It's almost always going to be someone else's rule, someone else's expectation that's based on what we were taught about how we had to perform as a child, or what society or culture or Instagram tells us is required to be a good mom. So it gets really tethered in all of these attachments to things outside of us. And that feeling, mom guilt is a horrible feeling. And it's something to pay attention to. We want to figure out what is it they're telling us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. And as a mom of like a 2 and a 5-year-old, I'm feeling this hard right now, because it's
That
trying to be a professional and it is like you're trying to like listen to your own inner voice that you're doing enough, but there are so many things that like add one more sport on, do this for the kids and, all the things demands at schools. And you're like, oh my gosh, how do I keep up with all this? So I love that you talk about the deeper things that are going on underneath the surface. And can you dive into that? Because a lot of that, as I've kind of followed your work, is stems from some of the things that we've learned growing up that then translates into what our adult experience is now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can all relate to this, even if we were raised in loving households with no big T trauma. I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I was raised by two professionals who were loving parents. I was provided pretty much anything, everything I needed. I privilege and opportunities and school and education, and my parents adored me. And I learned very young that I had to feel and think and behave and even look a certain way in order to receive what I wanted and needed from my parents, which was, you know, admiration and love and kudos and all of those things. And I think many of us who were raised in all kinds of households were sent these messages either directly or indirectly that we had to be a certain way in the world in order to be okay or enough for that matter.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because if we go back to look at sort of the way, the science of attachment and generational patterns of attachment in relationships between parents and children, our parents may have been raised a certain way to think, okay, I have to be a certain way in the world to survive, to be okay. And they just keep passing that down to us. And then we're little girls who grow up needing to be the good girl or do things right or have certain interests or feel certain ways or perform certain ways in order to get what we want. And then if we're not paying attention, we will bring that to our own children. So it's very human. I mean, I don't know that I've ever met anyone that doesn't get caught in this cycle. So the question isn't good, bad, right, wrong that we're in it. It's what do we do with it, right? When we realize that we're sort of working and living and doing in a way that's leading to burnout and guilt and anxiety, what part am I playing in that? How are my
Mhm.
thoughts and my beliefs triggering that whole sense of feeling and being in motherhood? That makes sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I so appreciate you saying that it's not necessarily this like big trauma event that we had that is bringing this up. And Gabor Mate talks about that. It's not
Yes.
necessarily the presence of something bad. It can also be the absence of something good. And it can be really hard to conceptualize that when you do look back on your childhood, like you may think like, what's wrong with me? I had everything. I had a good childhood. Why am I experiencing all these things? And it can really be those deep dives that uncover some of the deeper things that may have been going on that you didn't realize because you were just in survival mode as a child. And
Yeah, or for those listeners who are kind of pausing and listening to this and saying, "What's wrong with me now?" On paper, my life looks exactly the way I want it to. I have this a great husband and these healthy kids and a beautiful home and a job and on paper everything looks great. Why am I feeling so exhausted or anxious or guilty or empty or stuck? It's funny how we can think we need direct visible evidence to justify how we feel. And a
totally.
lot of the time, it's just in the air. It's just behind all the energy of the thinking and the beliefs that we bring to the table.
Absolutely. Do you mind just sharing a little bit your story? You talk about, you had good parents and everything. Can you talk about, when did you start to realize some of the things that maybe were unconsciously passed on to you and how they were impacting how you were thinking or behaving or your belief system?
Yeah, a great question. So I was raised in New York City by two lawyers. So both my parents were very invested in their careers. Super close with my mom. My mom, actually, side note, she passed away 8 years ago from a stress-related illness, which is an important fact here,
Mhm.
because the last time I saw her, I was driving her to the airport from Colorado, where I live. She was going back to New York City, and she turned to me and said, "I have been running for class president every day of my life," and she was 71 years old.
Mhm.
So I was raised by a mother who everyone loved. I mean, everyone wanted my mom to be their mom. She was so, alive and vivid and breaking glass ceilings and doing all these things. However, as her daughter, I felt her anxiety. I felt this need to be better than she was all the time. And not just to feel better necessarily, but to do better, to do more, to continue to impress people, to continue to, you know, expand her goals and achievements. And it was amazing to watch and very inspiring, but she also never sat still. She also, she would say to me, "Please relax and rest." But then I'd watch her never slow down, right? So I had tons of anxiety as a child, very severe panic attacks growing up. I was prescribed Xanax when I was 18, and I took it every day for 18 years, which is not the way benzodiazepines are supposed to be utilized. So I sort of grew up in this air of anxiety and push and achievement, and it really impacted how I felt. Um, I ended up, when I had my first daughter, having very severe postpartum anxiety. Side note, when I decided, my husband and I were talking about getting married, and my husband, who at the time, this really pissed me off, by the way, Kelly, but he was like, I want to know who you are when you're not taking the medicine. And at the time, I was like, I am who I am because of the medicine. But I will tell you now, that statement was very hooked in to these
Mhm.
fear-based limiting beliefs I had about myself, that I wasn't capable of moving through the world and feeling the way I wanted to feel without the medicine. I was very convinced of that. And I believe now that that is part of the problem. However, I did go off the Xanax. I did develop during that time other techniques. I was sort of doing all the right things. I started meditating. I, had a therapist. I was doing yoga. Of course, still had those limiting beliefs. So that's important to recognize. Had my first daughter, had severe postpartum anxiety, kind of moved through that stage. By the way, I was doing this work at the time. So that's another thing for us all to remember, that we can know in our head what to do and advise other people and not be doing it for ourselves. And that was very much my situation. When I had my second daughter, first daughter was 3. My daughter's now 16 and 18, by the way. But when my second daughter was born, my first daughter was 2.5. My newborn, probably this was probably when she was about 4 or 5 months old, my newborn. And I remember this sense of needing to get all the naps right and needing to make sure that my older toddler was always okay and steady and calm and well behaved. And I was putting my baby to bed, nap time, and in comes my toddler with a drawing to show me. Big smile on her face, all excited. Mommy, 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 look at my drawing. And I lost it. I remember screaming so loud that my throat hurt. Of course, I was scared she was going to wake up the baby. Meanwhile, you see what's happening, right? Now I'm waking up the baby because I'm screaming.
Mhm.
And I remember her looking, she was terrified. She looked at me with just eyes of terror. And it was that moment, honestly, Kelly, where I was like, wow, something needs to shift here because I'm so preoccupied by getting it right, having my baby sleep exactly at between 1 and 3 p.m., having my toddler be the perfect, well-behaved child that she never, and I got away from what matters most, which is the connection and how I wanted to feel. So that was really the moment where I decided I needed to figure out a different way. It wasn't going to be medicine because I knew there was something. I'm not opposed to medicine, but I knew that there was something else happening. I needed to find it from the inside. It wasn't going to be doing all the right things because I was eating the right foods and I was doing yoga and I had a meditation practice, but it was that I was still bringing these beliefs about myself to my world as a mother, that the rigid thinking, the all or nothing, the I'm not good enough unless, the I'm not okay unless. And it was those deep rooted, hardwired beliefs that were leading to all my anxiety and
Mhm.
guilt and burnout. So I guess my pathway to finding a different way, that's really when it started. When I had 2 daughters, young, 3 and 1, 2 and newborn. It was that stage of motherhood that I really was like, I actually have to figure out what's really happening here because I'm doing all the right things
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's not working.
Yeah. First of all, just thank you so much for sharing that
Yeah.
story. That I can very much resonate with that. And I'm sure there are so many moms right now who are listening that have a similar version of that story where cognitively like that's not how you want to show up, but there's just something within you that it snaps and you react and then you feel that guilt and shame afterwards of like, why did I do that? And then it becomes that whole cycle again. And it can be so difficult to live like that when you feel like you're just always at your breaking point and you're always just exhausted and you're doing more and more and more, and the world's telling you you're not doing enough. And it's
Oh,
such a hard place to be in. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I want to get into, some of how do you get out of that? Because there's so many people who are like, okay, now what do I do? Because I'm living that right now and I'm doing that and I saw my kid's face and I know we feel disconnected. How do you start to navigate that once you start to recognize those patterns within yourself?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I guess I want to pause with a little bit of humor here because not only is it a great question, but it's a knee-jerk question most of us are going to ask. We're like, okay, Kate and Kelly are talking about this thing. I'm starting to feel like it resonates. I don't like how I'm feeling. And so tell me what to do so I don't have to feel the way I feel. And it's
Mm,
not that it's not a great question to ask. And it's not that we don't want to actually put action, take action and put things into place. But I think this knee-jerk need to move away from the emotional discomfort is part of the problem.
yeah.
So I guess I would love to invite everybody who's in that place and you and me, because I have to do this. I mean, again, I've got a girl, I got a kiddo go to college next year, and I'm
Mhm.
still doing this work on a moment to moment basis. But just as like put a hand on our heart and take a deep breath and remind ourselves that we are not crazy. We are not bad humans. We are not bad mothers. We're just caught up in a system of more, do more, not enough, or maybe even this is just the way it is, which I think is also something we can get stuck in mothering, which keeps us stuck in a place where it's a mindset we get stuck in that keeps us in a place where we're not finding any relief. So
Yeah.
the first thing is just to ask the question, my life looks a certain way on paper. How am I really feeling behind closed doors and inside my own skin? That is the first question to ask. It is a brave, vulnerable, tender, life-changing question. And we ask that question with a ton of self-compassion because if anyone's like me, there's going to be a time where someone listening is like, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to be doing this, but there's something wrong with me. And you and I are relating. We seem to have a very similar experience. My guess is that most people listening are relating. And so we're not alone in this. It's kind of a setup. Motherhood and the way I'll speak to the US is constructs life for mothers is just a setup. It's a setup for burnout and guilt and anxiety. So let's start there.
Mhm.
Okay, we're all going to take a deep breath.
Yep.
And then we begin to ask a really valuable question, which is how do I want to feel? Not what do I need to do? Not what do I want my life to look like, but how do I want to feel? That is a question that I think we go through life trying to run away from feelings of anxiety or disappointment or guilt or whatever it is. We're like, don't want to go anywhere near that. But then we also forget to ask, how do I want to feel? And it's such a valuable question because it has very little to do with what we're doing. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Totally. Absolutely. Yes.
It's really interesting when I ask myself that on a regular basis, when I ask my girls that, when I ask my clients that, people sometimes there's a double take. Like, what do you want to mean? What do you mean? I want to feel like I don't have so much on my plate. No, no, no. That's a thought or a statement or reflection. How do you want to feel? Oh, I want to feel connected.
Yeah.
I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel confident. Okay. If that's the way you want to feel, then we actually have to go back and redesign, reframe some of the beliefs that you have. One of the things that I think happens so often for us is that we know what we need to do. Put our own oxygen mask on first. I mean, how many times have we heard that? Take
Mhm.
better care of ourselves.
Yep.
Take a deep breath,
Mhm.
get down at our child's level. But if those deep beliefs we have, if the stories that we've been told about ourselves and what is and is not possible in motherhood is incongruent to self compassion and self care, we will not be kind to ourselves and we will not do what we need to do to build resilience in our brain to stress. Because if we believe we're not enough, we're not good enough, or we're supposed to be holding it all, or good mothers do everything and never ask for help, if that's our belief system, the doing that we need to do to get to the other place is going to not last for very long because it just is a mismatch. It's incongruent. I kind of went in multiple directions with your question, but I
Yeah,
guess.
no, it's right on. And there's just something I want to highlight with what you said, because I think this is so key, is that, when we say, okay, how do you want to feel? Often we do respond like, I don't want to feel this way. But when you say I don't want to, the brain only hears all those bad things. So that's where the subconscious mind comes in, because you're just enforcing all those beliefs of how you don't want to feel, rather than like, what do you actually want to invite in your life? So it's small, but it's so big.
One of the things I hear a lot when I ask this question are things like, I want to feel peaceful. I want
Mhm.
to trust that my kids are okay. I
Yeah.
want to feel steady, even when there's a ton of uncertainty and unpredictability. I want to feel joyful. I want to feel free. That's another word I hear. And then when we start digging into, okay, tell me what your beliefs are about motherhood. Tell me what did you learn about what it means to be a good mom? I hear things like, well, motherhood is really hard and exhausting all the time. I hear, um, I hear the mom is the one that has to do everything.
Mhm.
I hear things like, well, good moms sacrifice themselves and always put their kids first. And then you ask the question again, well, how do you feel now again? Oh, you feel guilty and you feel burnt out and you feel emotionally exhausted. And it's sort of like you're not going to not feel those emotions and those feelings in your body if you commit and stay so attached to those beliefs, because the beliefs don't allow for the feelings you want to feel.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, okay, if you want to feel peaceful, if you want to feel connected, if you want to feel grounded, if you want to feel all these things you want to feel, what would you need to believe was true about yourself or motherhood in order to have access to those feelings? And now we get to start kind of opening up our perspective to all these other ideas about what might be possible for you in motherhood, regardless of whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a working mom.
Mhm.
So it's reflection and curiosity, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And then that just allows for more expansion of like, okay, what could happen? Where's the growth and how can we change this, rather than like staying in this like constricted place of just perpetuating the same feelings that we often are experiencing, and then the same environment, and then the same experiences for our kids over and over again. So yeah, I mean, it's so powerful. One thing as you're speaking that just came to me is that when we start to see some of these things that are going on within us, and we start to uncover some of these beliefs, and we can start to kind of trace it back to some of the things maybe we experienced in childhood, how do we get out of that cycle of maybe overthinking it and trying to do things maybe opposite of what our experience was, so that we don't can carry on these generational things onto our kids? Like, how do we start to be the one who breaks that within ourselves without getting so caught up in being the opposite of what our experience was?
Love this question. So, any rigid thinking is fear based thinking.
Hmm.
So, when we go, I'm to that place of, I'm never going to do that thing, or I'm always going to do this other thing, we're just recycling the same limiting belief and the kind of attachment trauma that comes with that, but just from a different perspective, right? So we really want to be paying attention to context and values and feelings versus doing. This
Hmm.
happens all the time, right? If someone has a parent, let's say someone was raised by a mother who was really emotionally unavailable. Maybe she was working all the time. Maybe she had her own mental health challenges. Maybe she had gone through her own divorce or was having her own struggle. Maybe there were so many kids in the family, but something that was going on where that mom was really unavailable emotionally. And by the way, what I mean by that, Kelly, is healthy and steady and present enough to stay with you when you were feeling the whole gamut of feelings. That's what I mean. If she wasn't emotionally available for that. And you sort of have this experience of having been abandoned or not getting what you needed in life. And you then become a mom and you're like, there is no way my child is ever going to be feel abandoned by me. I am always going to be available for them.
Hmm.
You know where this is going, right?
Oh,
And then
totally.
we have a child and we are so afraid to disappoint them. We are so afraid to quote unquote cause any pain or distress. We are so afraid to lead their side because we're worried they're going to feel abandoned that we create a different unhealthy attachment with our child, which is more of an anxious attachment. We may have had a more avoidant attachment with our own mom. We may have created this anxious attachment, and we're afraid to ever have that child out of our sight because we're afraid that they're going to feel distress. Also, not helpful.
Mhm.
So again, I would go to the feeling. How do you want to feel? And then I would go to the science. What we know from secure attachment, all the data around secure attachment, which is very different than attachment parenting, just to be clear, because people will also often confuse attachment parenting with the theories of attachment.
Mhm.
Secure attachment, which really just means that I am a parent who is healthy enough in my mind and my belief systems and my psychology. I can tolerate and regulate my own emotions. I've taken care of my body so that I feel energetic and resilient enough to stress that I can stay steady even when my child's having a hard time.
Mhm.
If I'm going to lean in towards that, if I'm going to be that parent, I'm neither going to be totally unavailable or available all the time.
Mhm.
Secure attachment requires that we can both separate and connect. And so it's sort of that concept of moving from the either or to the both and.
Mhm.
Many of us were not raised to believe that that's okay, that we don't have to choose.
Mhm.
Our nervous systems love when we give ourselves permission to feel it all at the same time, to, you know, not have to choose between being one in one box or another box.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And what I've heard from you throughout this is that it's so important to be connected with your emotions and understand your emotions. And I want to dive deeper into that because often maybe, that example again, if you have a parent that was very distant, not really emotionally available for you, that it can be really hard for you to be in touch with your own emotions because maybe you've disconnected from yourself in order to adapt to that environment. How do you then start to get connected to your own emotions and really be authentic in how you feel and express that?
Yeah. Well, first, we're going to have to go back to the belief because we're just going to keep doing
Mhm.
that. What do you
Yeah.
believe to be true about emotions? Because if you were taught to believe that uncomfortable emotions were bad and dangerous, they meant there was something wrong with you or something bad about to happen, which, by the way, we don't make up these beliefs out of nowhere. We were taught them somewhere. So it's just that many of them are outdated. You talk about this stuff all the time in your podcast, right?
Mhm.
And so, I think that the first question is it possible that the emotion is not the problem?
Mhm.
What if the emotion wasn't the problem? The emotion itself is just our brain taking a conscious or unconscious thought or belief and releasing chemicals into the body to either get ourselves ready to fight, flight, or freeze, or to rest and digest, right? That's what a feeling is, just what we feel in our body, the physiological sensations that come with the way our brain is interpreting a situation. And again, sometimes this is all happening unconsciously. We're not aware it's happening. But the feeling is never the problem. It can be really uncomfortable and really inconvenient. But when we can shift that belief so that we then have more tolerance to stay steady in the most moments of uncomfortable feeling, now we have so much more opportunity at our fingertips because we don't have to fix something in the moment. We don't have to change ourselves. We don't have to micromanage other people. We don't have to fix something as if there's a problem. We can just pause in the moment. You know, the science tells us that when we let ourselves feel a feeling, it comes and goes in 90 seconds.
Mhm.
Usually we fuel that with all kinds of stuff, which keeps it
Yep.
around. But again, I think we're going to go back to what are you telling yourself about the feeling you're feeling? And we have to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When we I mean, I'll kind of teach you and your audience something that I call the three C's, which is a way to move, because I think people like some framework and practice. Would it be okay if I just
Yeah,
dove into
absolutely.
that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So many of us were feeling, let's say, anxious or scared or angry or disappointed or sad, and we don't like the way we feel. And one of the things we want to make sure we understand, we want to help our kids do this. We can't help our kids do this unless we know how to do this ourselves first. But is that there's a way to feel a feeling and not get caught up in the experience of the feeling.
Mhm.
And so, I think it's an appropriate question to ask, what can I do so I don't keep feeling this way over and over and over? But many of us will feel that emotional discomfort and we'll go right to the problem solving. We
Mhm.
miss the first two most important points. So I call this the three C's. It helps us move from a really unpleasant emotion back to a more pleasant one. The first C is curiosity. Like, what am I feeling? So many of us don't even do that. We go outwards, we don't go inwards. What am
Mhm.
I feeling? I'm feeling tenseness in my chest. My jaw is clenched. I'm feeling heat in my cheeks. I feel shortness of breath. I'm feeling angry, irritated, scared, disappointed, sad. Okay, that's the first C is just getting curious. Really asking ourselves those curious questions. The second C is compassion. We do not do this very well. We go to self criticism and judgment because of
Mhm.
that limiting belief. I'm not good enough unless, right?
Yeah.
I'm not okay unless. And so the second C is not what's wrong with me. I shouldn't feel this way. I should just be happy, is like, yeah, of course I feel this. Our hand on our heart.
Mhm.
That connection with ourself that says, this is a really hard moment, but given the context of this moment, of course I feel this way. By the way, when we're in moments of connection with ourselves or other people, our sympathetic nervous system turns on, rest and digest, and our fight, flight, or freeze turns down. So, that act of self compassion, that act of curiosity from a neuroscience perspective begins to turn down the fight, flight, or freeze limbic brain response in our brain. Now that we've done those two things, now we can ask the third question, the third C, which is choice. How do I want to feel? I don't want to be stuck in anxiety or disappointment or sadness or anger. I want to feel calm or connected or hopeful or grateful. How do I want to feel? And then the question becomes what thought or what baby step action will get me closer to that new feeling? It is not about not feeling the first feeling. It's
Mhm.
about also giving access to other feelings so that we don't get all consumed and stuck in that first feeling. And if we really work with our thoughts in that moment, challenging those limiting beliefs, opening up to other possibilities, and if we do those little actions that will get us closer, go stand outside in the sunshine, take a deep breath, give someone a hug, look someone in the eye, drink a glass of water, whatever the thing is, shake it off, whatever it is, we are likely to get closer to that feeling, which unhooks us from the more unpleasant feeling that we're afraid is going to consume us.
Yeah.
So there's a little framework for people to
Yeah.
work off of.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing because it's, sometimes those little tangible things that when you're going through one of those moments, you can just hold on to and be like, oh, the three C's, and even just pull you into that and allows you to work through it. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's going to be something that I know someone's going to take and it's really going to help them in tremendous ways. So I love that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to, oh,
Yeah.
good.
Well, I was just going to say we can use that with our kids too. Those three
Yeah.
C's are it's a
Gosh.
helpful parenting tool because sometimes we go right to fixing the behavior or fixing
Mhm.
the emotion, and we got to do step one and two first.
Yeah.
Usually, step one and two will settle our kids' nervous systems, and their behavior will change on its own. But just as a little side note.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you can integrate that, with yourself and your kids because a lot of times we think it's like mutually exclusive. Like I need to work on myself in a box and then when I'm good, I'll be there for my kids. But like you can integrate this together and now you don't have to take your time apart from your kid. You can just do it with your kid. So I
Absolutely.
love that. And I think that's just so helpful for people to hear that. It's like you don't have to do your self-care by yourself, like integrate that with your kids.
Yes.
So, one thing you talked about earlier, and I want to go back to because I think it's just really would be a great segue into understand like our energy. But I know you were sharing that when growing up, you would feel your mom's energy, and then you would take that inward. Can you talk about that and what's the importance of like boundaries for some people? Because again, when we tune outside of ourselves, it can be really hard for us to be able to tune into ourselves. Can you talk about the role of boundaries in that?
For sure. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about what boundaries are,
Mhm.
and boundaries are not punishment. And boundaries are not kind of rigid rules. Boundaries are the choices we make with respect to our own actions and thinking, but let's just focus on actions for a moment that help the whole community stay healthy and well.
Mhm.
And, it's interesting. One of the things that I think my parents missed in raising me was a willingness to own their own feelings and show me that they were taking their own responsibility for tending to their own feelings. So the message I got was, my parents are not feeling good. And if I don't do something, if I don't change how I'm behaving or fix something for them, they're never going to be okay. So,
Mhm.
and they never told me that. I mean, that's what's so interesting. This was
Yeah.
all just what, to your point earlier, and what Gabor Mate talks about, it's what wasn't said, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It is no problem for our children to feel us feeling emotionally uncomfortable. Again, because the feeling's never the problem.
Mhm.
And if we get rigid around, I never want my child to see me distressed, we're also setting the message feeling distress is a problem or wrong or bad. And it's like an unintended message in that. So
Mhm.
to me, the place the boundary is important is owning our own responsibility as a grown up, to own my emotions and feelings, and to take personal responsibility for taking care of myself so that it doesn't get unintentionally sent to my children that, this is your fault. I'm feeling this way because of something you're doing. By the way, pause. We actually will believe this sometimes.
Mhm.
We will in our own body say, well, if you just listened, then I wouldn't feel so impatient,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
If you just X, Y, or Z, then I wouldn't have to feel the way I'm feeling. And to me, that's a real miss. And we're doing our kids a lot of disservice because we're telling them that they are responsible for how everyone else feels. And they're likely to grow up to be a people pleaser and someone who takes on more than their 100% of the pie.
Mhm.
Um, so the boundary in this example that you're asking probably looks something like, wow, I am naming it to tame it. I am feeling so irritated right now. Hey, I'm feeling sort of sad today. I am feeling really anxious today. I'm not quite sure why. And today, just so you know, kiddo, however old you are, by the way, we can do this with infants too. We can just talk to them. Today, I'm going to move a little bit slower. Today, I'm actually going to take some time for myself. I'm going to get you a babysitter. You're going to be with daddy, or you're going to be with whoever, so that I can take some time to get outside and move my body. I'm going to make sure I eat healthy today. I'm going to take some deep breaths. That we're really modeling it's okay to feel what I'm feeling, and I'm going to take care of myself around that. So, does that answer your question as far as
Yeah.
boundary? I think
Yeah.
we want to be
Absolutely.
authentic but not transparent. And if there are no boundaries, we're just spilling our emotions all over the place without any willingness to take responsibility for them. Sorry about that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I love that example of just, the communication that you can have with your child in that moment, and that you are responsible for your own emotions and recognizing that. And then it also teaches the child that they're not responsible for other people's emotions, which again, what you say very much resonates with me. There, many things that I've experienced in that same area of that. It's challenging when you haven't had that modeled before you. So I
And
know.
it's challenging if you believe
Yeah.
that the emotion is bad. I mean, it's
Yes.
really hard. It's going to
Yeah.
be very difficult to use those words or show up that way if that way of moving
Mhm.
forward is incongruent with the belief system that you have.
Right. Totally. Yes, I love that. And that's and my let talks about that most things are caught, not taught. So you can tell your kids as much as you want to tell them, but until you're actually embodying that, there's not going to be nothing that's learned from them other than what you're still struggling with. So it's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. I want to going off of that. You talked about something else, and I wanted to touch back on that. Is that you talked about the doing, 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 doing. That I'm doing all the things. All we can get so caught up because social media has all these things. 3 things you can do for this, 7 you can do for this, and you could have your checklist of all the things, and you can look back on your day and be like, I did all the things, and I feel no different. Can you talk about the difference between doing and actually embodying and experiencing?
Yeah. Great question. And as you're saying this, I'm realizing, I mean, it's really, we have to be willing to feel the hard things, because you say that, and I'm like, oh, I think I just posted something yesterday, 3 things you can do. I mean, this is
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
embedded we are in this
Mhm.
culture. Even those of us that are
Yeah.
really wanting to change the language and shift the tone are caught up in these things. So it is everywhere. So, can you tell me your question again, just so I can find the
Yeah.
best way to answer it?
Yeah, absolutely. With social media and everything that we get bombarded with, it's all these things like, here, you need to do this, to
Yeah.
feel this way, you need to do this. And then you could have your checklist of 20 things and you could do all 20 things, but at the end of the day, you may feel no different or you may feel worse. You talk
Yeah.
about the checklist, doing it versus
Yes.
actually feeling it.
Yeah, great. I want to introduce the difference between the what and the why.
Hmm.
So, what we do does not really matter.
Hmm.
Why we do it matters. I had a experience probably 7 or 8 years ago where I founded and ran a parent and family wellness center here in Boulder. I ran it for 15 years. And I had a very hard week at work with clients. And I said, I am going to take a self care day. I'm so excited. I'm just going to take a mental health day. I'm going to take a self care day. I blocked out my entire schedule. I scheduled like breakfast with a friend, a hike, yoga, massage, acupuncture. I was like, I am just going to do it. At about 4:15, I came sprinting into my acupuncturist appointment, 15 minutes late.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, I'm here. And she
Hmm.
looks at me and she goes, how's that self care day going?
Hmm.
Because I had brought the same mindset
Hmm.
to my self care day that I did
Hmm.
to everything else.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when we slow down and actually look at what's the common denominator here. I mean, a massage is different than 5 hours of back to back psychotherapy sessions with my clients. I get it. But if the mentality or the self pressure or the high expectation or the doing it right is the common denominator in both, I'm going to feel the same way at the end of both days. So I think that probably gets us to the answer. And
Hmm.
it's sort of like, okay, if we're doing all the right things from an intellectual place because we think we should, but we're not actually checking in to see how we feel when we do those things, nothing's going to be very different.
Yeah, I love that. And then thank you for your example because there's so many of us like, oh, I've been there. Like, I'm
Yes.
sure there's so many, I know I have. Like, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, here we go again. Yep. And then you don't even
Again.
feel relaxed after taking that day.
Mhm.
So I totally understand that. And then one thing I want to just go into off of that is that, again, we can get bombarded with all this information. How do we know what's right for us? Because we can very much get caught up in the authority figures thinking that they know better than we do. How do you start to tune into your own filter to know like that's right for me, no that's not right for me?
Oh my gosh, we all get so caught in this. And this question is speaking to the woman who believes that everybody else knows, but she doesn't. That the answers lie outside of her in all of the experts and not inside of her. And this way of moving through the world again is born from a belief of I'm not enough or I'm not okay. Because if I believe I'm not enough or I'm not okay, why the heck would I trust myself? But
Mhm.
I'm not going to trust the person who isn't good enough and isn't okay. So I want to just as a caveat remind folks that that's where the work has to start.
Mhm.
Always, always, always. I am going to really go back. I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record here as I say that and then this next thing. But the question again becomes how do you want to feel?
Mhm.
How do you want to feel? And sometimes, so I remember, by the way, again, long time ago, but when my baby children were babies, there was this woman from Australia who was out there. We didn't have the same kind of intense social media that we have now,
Mhm.
although, of course, there was plenty of it. Facebook was still around, but there was a woman who um, claimed to be the baby whisperer, and she had a whole system for how to translate your baby's cries, how to decode the cries.
Mhm.
And at this point, it was when I had postpartum anxiety with my first baby. And at this point, had a lot of anxiety, but it wasn't directly related to this topic, right? It was more related, she's not eating enough and she's not growing. And what if she, has autism and all of that stuff. But as far as this sort of meeting her needs in the moment, that wasn't my thing.
Mhm.
The moment I watched these videos, they were like DVDs. The moment shows how old I am. The moment I watched these videos, I started to second guess myself.
Mhm.
I'm doing this wrong. And then all of a sudden, when my baby would cry and I'd get in my head about what is she saying in this cry? Is she hungry or does she want a hug or do I just leave her? And I was trying to go back to the information. I felt so dysregulated in my body when I was
Mhm.
trying to put into practice these things that I was being told I should do. My
Mhm.
body knew it wasn't right for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to remember, that our body always knows. Our nervous system knows when something's congruent or not congruent. And it's a different feeling than just the general discomfort of being new at something. Like what I'm talking about, I was feeling is not the same feeling of, oh, I know this is the right thing for me and it's clumsy and I'm fumbling because it's a different internal feeling. But that internal feeling of wrongness and utter
Mhm.
confusion and trying to fit myself a square peg into a round hole. I know what that feels like in my body now.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think that's it. Sometimes we are lost and we don't know what to do and we look to the outside. That's okay. It's okay to
Mhm.
look to the outside. But when someone's telling you to do something that just does not feel right in your body, it's just not the right thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So important to decipher that and know that and just to see that power of like the suggestions, like really
Oh,
be careful of what you expose yourself to because even if you're not eating it up, like you don't know what those messages are telling you. And for you, those they were not serving you. So so important to recognize what you're allowing to come in into
and
your
I think
system.
and I think you just said it so beautifully. They weren't serving me. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
they weren't serving other people.
Yeah.
Because when we get out of the all or nothing, we recognize that context is everything.
Mhm.
For some moms out there, that information may have been super helpful. It was
Mhm.
not helpful for me. And it doesn't have to be, I should make it helpful for me because it's helpful for other people. And nor do I need to say it was all, you know, BS and not helpful for anybody because based on everyone's situation, I'm sure it was very helpful for a lot of people because she was getting a
Yeah.
lot of attention at the time.
Mhm.
Was not helpful for me. So it's
Yeah.
just tuning back into really trusting that when we quiet the noise and we feel our feet on the floor and we take those deep, long breaths that remind us that in this moment we're okay, we're
Mhm.
usually going to know best what's right for us in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing I just want to ask you, because big theme we've heard through this is the beliefs that you carry and how much they impact every aspect of your life. Do you mind just sharing your story of how did you start to transform some of those beliefs and release yourself from some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's profound for me
Mhm.
because I'm now 52. I have two teenage daughters. I have a long history of perfectionism, comparing myself to others, not feeling good enough, but mostly not believing that I was okay. I had this really weird, unsettled feeling of dread a lot of my life, and I had a lot of hypochondria.
Mhm.
I really doubted myself in social situations. And it came back when I did this work for myself. It was less, I'm not enough, and more like, I'm not okay. Like, there's really something wrong with me.
Mhm.
Now, I've done so much work around this that I know exactly where that came from and exactly where both my parents felt like there was something wrong with them. So I do want to just little note here, let people know with giant hearts coming out of my head and so much self compassion. What you believe about yourself is what you will believe about your children and what they will believe about themselves. So we really want to look at this work that we're talking about today is profoundly important in service of our kids, not in just service of ourselves. But I grew up really believing that I wasn't okay. And as I started to listen to the voice in my head, I was like, well, of course I'm anxious all the time. I literally have a record playing in my brain. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of humorous when we pull up away. We're like, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
how could I not be on the verge of a panic attack all the time?
Mhm.
How could I not be looking at my beautiful baby who's actually healthy as like, no, there's something really wrong with her?
Mhm.
Actually, the doctors don't know yet, but there's something really wrong with her. I mean, this sense of not okayness. So
Yeah.
What I trained myself to do, which is sort of bizarre, but I will tell you, I still do it and it works, is when I'm walking, I walk to the mantra, I am okay.
Mhm.
I am okay. Now, my definition of okay is not, I'm awesome. It's not like, I got this. I'm good at this. I feel at the top of the world. It is literally my definition of confidence. The opposite of fear is not safety, it's confidence. It is like, I'm okay. I can do this. Even when I'm angry, I'm still okay. Even when I don't know the answer, I'm still okay. Even when I'm feeling so swallowed up by things I can't control, I'm still okay. And it's that mantra that I sort of hardwired my brain to believe. And then, of course, confirmation bias. When we tell ourselves something is true, our brain will look for all the evidence to prove that that's true. So, as I did that, my brain began to, rather than look for all the things that showed that I wasn't okay and I wasn't enough and my children were not okay, it looked for all the evidence to show me that I was okay and I am enough and my children are okay. And I've done that enough now that it's just, I've rewired my system.
Mhm.
There
I
you
love
have
that.
it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Because again, the power of rewiring your brain, that's there it is. It starts out as like a dirt path and then it's a little bit more trampled. And then before you know, it's a freeway that you can easily just access. So I love that.
And it's the belief from the inside. I mean, I was someone who constantly needed reassurance. I mean, I took Xanax for 18 years. I
Yeah.
needed something outside of me to tell me that I was okay. I I love reassurance. I love when people tell me I'm doing a good job. I love a good glass of wine that's going to alter my state, but I don't need the medication or the wine or the reassurance to believe that I'm okay anymore. It's not that I don't want it, it's just that I don't need it. And there's so much freedom that comes from that.
Yeah, yeah, so beautiful and so profound. And just that statement you said earlier about your children will believe what you believe about yourself. That is so powerful. And if there's any reason to start to do a deep dive into yourself, there it is, right there.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter is, I will tell you, I mean, I was in the same place most of your listeners are. I mean, early motherhood was so hard for me because of
Yeah.
all the unpredictability and uncertainty and chaos. My daughters are 16 and 18. My baby, who I had postpartum anxiety with, is going off to college next year. We had a family meeting on her 18th birthday where we were sort of family meeting. We were out to dinner and we were going around the table and we were each telling her something that we believed to be true about her, my husband, myself, and my 16-year-old daughter. And it was my husband's turn. And he looked at Kinley and he said, I know you're okay.
Hmm.
I know
Wow.
you're okay. And I know you're going to be okay. And this isn't, I mean, this is a kid that's a typical 18-year-old. It's not like things are going her way all the time. It's not like she feels awesome all the time.
Yeah.
But I know she believes that. And so
Mhm.
she's going to go to college and she's going to have all the same hard stuff that we all did when we went off for the first time, and her heartbreaks and her feeling left out and her feel struggling in school. And I do truly believe that she knows that she's okay. My 16-year-old is going off to Japan next fall,
Oh, wow.
fall of her junior year, to go live with a family and go to a
Yeah.
traditional Japanese school in some
Mhm.
rural part of Japan. I
Wow.
believe she knows that she can do
Yeah.
hard things and feel uncomfortable and still be okay. So yes, I think it is. If we want our children to feel that way about themselves and their lives, we have to do the work first ourselves.
Yeah. What a testament to the work that you've done. And I so appreciate you sharing those stories. And it's through that you can really, you can see yourself in your own stories and hopefully realize that this is worth every ounce of effort that you put into yourself. So I so
Yes.
appreciate everything you've shared. And for someone who wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm going to send you two links
Mhm.
for your show notes. One is that I have taken my 20 years in working with this population. Really, all my work has ever been around maternal and child mental health. I have a 12-week program that's designed to help women move from emotional overwhelm and guilt and burnout to calm and confidence and connection. There's a masterclass I'll send you for your link that tells more about, gives more detail on what we've talked about tonight, but today, but also gives them more information about that program. There's a link to book a call with me in there if people are interested. I'm also going to send your listeners a link to a free resource. I created a 21-day Calm Mom Reset. One of the things that we do not always do so well in motherhood, especially when we're busy, is take care of ourselves and our brain. This helps moms create something called a non-pharmaceutical prescription for mental health that just builds resilience so that we can be more steady and present the way we want to. It's like having a coach in your pocket for 21 days, and I'll just send that link to your listeners, and they're welcome to try that on for size and start by building brain resilience by
Mhm.
really accessing those things in motherhood that can be really hard to access when we are trying to do so much. So people can find me there, Instagram at Kate Kripke. I love connecting with people on Instagram. Yeah.
Amazing. And I'll put everything in the show notes. So if
Thank
you're
you.
listening, definitely connect with Kate. And again, thank you so much for everything you shared today. So much value, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Kelly. I love this conversation. And yeah, just a joy to be here.
Absolutely. Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in, and definitely share this episode with someone who you think could really benefit from it. So thank you so much again.